All right, so what I usually do after that is I post it about a week later so that people who come are privileged to see it first. And then other people, and then you get, you know, people can watch it whenever they want. And I'll post a link for that in the chat afterwards, you know, for the people on this call. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
All right, cool. I'll start from the beginning. Okay, so thanks everyone for coming. First of all, see if there's anybody else who's waiting in the queue. No, there isn't. This is a talk by Callum Akehurst-Ryan, our esteemed guest for the day, talking about selling testing into agile teams, how to get their backing for our efforts. So, you know, we've just had our 15 minutes of waiting for people to come. This is an introduction by Sydney Testers. My name is Paul Maxwell Walters. I'm the acting chair of Sydney Testers and one of the committee. We're Sydney. I'll go in a bit further into Sydney Testers in the next slide. So after this short intro, Callum will talk for about, what did you say, 15 minutes, wasn't it?
I can talk for about 45 minutes. Yeah.
Well, however long you want, really. And then we'll
Yeah.
have a Q&A session, and then we'll finish after the Q&A. So welcome to Sydney Testers. Thanks for coming to this event. Especially great to see all the people from all over the world here. We've had people from India mentioning in the comments, and Sydney and Melbourne and all over. It's great stuff. We're a group of volunteers that focus on improving testing in Sydney. We organise monthly talks, socials, and other events for the Sydney testing community. We've had a wide range of international speakers who've spoken for us in the past in our long history. People like Michael Bolton, James Bark, Stephanie Russell, one of our community members, Mark Santon Rutherford, Baz Dykstra, Trish Koo, Manoj Kumar, and now Callum Akehurst-Ryan. Thank you. Now, we are looking for people to help with our exec committee, so especially if you're based in Sydney. So if you want to get involved, please send me an email at paulwaltersau@gmail.com. So an introduction to tonight's speaker, Callum. He's a software tester based in London. Throughout his 15+ year career, he's had a variety of roles as test engineer, a lead, project manager, and an agile coach, so quite a varied experience. Very well-rounded approach to leadership in an agile environment, both as part of a test and the wider team, including stakeholder management, provision of team KPI. Specializes in the full stack exploratory testing, embedding agile testing to startups, human factors in testing, and quality reporting. And also a quick mention of the Testing Talks conference that we're helping to promote. This is run by Cameron, who's based in Melbourne. He does these great conferences. He did one in Melbourne last year that I went to, and it was a lot of fun. Really enjoyed it. And he's taking it to Sydney on the 26th of July, and there's a lot of good speakers coming to that. So there's people like Sam Connolly, Manoj Kumar. So it's quite, and there's be well representation in the group. There'll be a lot of it'd be quite an active social event. There'll be lots of different companies being represented. Some great talks. You should check it out. So it's going to have industry-leading speakers and interactive sessions paired with delicious catering and an open bar. Be lots of swag, super fun games, lots of awards and prizes for grabs all day long for attendees. Even we'll be having a game there. We're having a stall, Sydney Testers, and we'll be bringing some games for people to play. It's organised by testers for testers with the goal of creating a fun event for all. And we're committed to they are committed to making Testing Talks Conference on 2023 in Sydney the most amazing day for the community. So please come and take a look at testingtalks.com.au. It'll be on the 26th of July here in Sydney. So I'll stop the screen share now. Actually, no, there's one more thing to talk about before I do. On the 29th of June, and this is also on LinkedIn, if you're not on Meetup. For those of us who are based in Sydney, we're going to be at Applitools for our first in-person event of 2023, which will be in Barangaroo. And that's going to be by the CTO of Applitools, Adam Kami. We'll be talking about about AI and how it's influencing test automation, how it can be used to significantly expand end-to-end test automation. It's worth checking out. And also, we will be giving away a free ticket to the previously mentioned conference. So we'll be raffling that off. So if you want to be involved in the raffle, come along. Thank you very much. And please let me pass the chair over to Callum.
Hi, everyone. So thank you so much, Paul, for that introduction. And let me jump into it. Hopefully you can now see my screen and my slides. As we discussed, I'm going to be talking about selling testing into agile teams. So I'm going to make a couple of assumptions of what that looks like for people and give them a general grounding in what it looks like to be a new tester coming into that agile environment, a new company, a new organization, and how to basically push testing into those groups. You've had an introduction to me already, but I'm a narcissist. So here's a picture of me. As said, I'm Callum Akehurst-Ryan. I'm a senior tester at a company called Improbable. I've worked for the last 15 years in testing across a wide variety of organizations, specifically focused on startups recently, consulting to embed testing into them. So I know of what I speak. I've been the first tester at a lot of organizations and had to build testing from the ground up. I'm also a technical exploratory tester. For those of you who are interested in learning more about exploratory testing, you can see a lot of stuff on my blogs. If you look up cakehurstryan.com, that's where my blogs live. You can learn a lot about different technical things there, thoughts about testing and exploratory testing. So let me kick us off and talk about why do we have to sell testing in the first place? So testing isn't always a given in organizations. It's not always going to be the case that you come into a large organization, an enterprise organization that has a testing function, that has testers already in it, that has been working in testing. A lot of organizations moved away. Especially agile organizations have moved away from having a test function, so a separate dedicated testing team, towards embedded testers. We see the Spotify model happening quite often, where different engineers with different skill sets all work together in squads delivering something. There's not a specific tester. Instead, we have embedded testers, somebody whose job is to champion testing in that development team.
Sorry, Callum, I just realized that the screen has moved on to me and not you. I'm not quite sure what's going on. They've lost, they can't see your slides.
Oh, one sec. Let me stop sharing and I will reshare.
Yeah, thanks. I'm not quite sure what's going on there.
Back to me?
Yeah, it's back. We can see it now. Sorry about that. Thank you.
Cool. So as I said, testing is not always a given. Many organizations have moved towards that Spotify model where you have an embedded engineer whose job is to champion testing within that team. And we also see now there's a lot of startups bubbling up, and a lot of startups will basically bring in a lot of engineers, product and designers, but won't start with a tester. So you find that you have a lot of startups who hire for their first or their only tester. So in those organizations, not a lot of testing is happening. They don't have testers. So the market at the moment is full of organizations that have basically moved away from having a test function. You also find organizations, because it was very popular at the time, who offshored a lot of testing, removed their testers, offshored their testers, and they're bringing it back in-house. But they brought it back in-house to their engineers and not to specific dedicated testers as well. We also have to sell testing because testing isn't really fully known about. Lots of engineers, and in agile teams, we're talking about like our engineers that we're working around, just don't know a lot about testing. Comp sci courses that engineers will take only teach the real basics of testing. If you speak to a development engineer about what testing you know, they might know a little bit about end-to-end testing and a little bit about unit testing, but that's just the basics. Maybe it was a module in one of their courses, they had to throw in some unit tests, but that's pretty much it. And concepts like exploratory testing, modern agile testing, aren't widely known, even within the testing community. If you look on LinkedIn, if you look on Twitter, there are people still having to explain and discuss what exploratory testing is. It's not like a widely known and understood practice. And lots of people, although they have like a theoretical knowledge of testing, so maybe our engineers, maybe our product people, they might not have practical experience in it. They might have heard about testing. People might have seen blog posts about exploratory testing, but they haven't done it. So they don't know, what does it really mean? What value can I get from it? And the most dangerous thing, especially in startups and new organizations, is that people don't know what they don't know. Organizations who don't have testers don't know what testing they're missing because they've got no idea what they don't know. Even testers don't know what they don't know. So we have to basically be able to sell testing in order to educate people and say, look, here's what you can get from testing. There's also the view that prevails across a number of organizations, especially enterprise organizations, if you're in one of those, where testing is seen as checking. So this can basically be a view that the be all and end all of testing is this automation is a silver bullet, that basically if we tick off our acceptance criteria, that's all that testing can give us. Our testing industry has moved on. We are a lot more explorative now that we have automation in place for a lot of our regressions and for a lot of our basic checks around things. We can actually focus on not did we build this right, but did we build something good? And we can help with a lot of testing. So we have to sell what testing can bring to the table in this way. Testing can also sometimes be seen just as at the end of something. If you're working in an agile team, you need to be able to test from the very beginnings of an idea of something. So a lot of exploratory testing is this push left concept. I don't know how familiar everyone is with that, but generally, if a product owner comes to me with an idea of, I want a chair, I can test that idea. I can say, cool, how many people want to be able to sit down? Do you need a sofa? In fact, do people need to be able to lie down? Do you need a sofa bed? That's testing. That's subjecting their ideas to critical analysis and questioning, trying to find out information to build the right product. So that's, again, not something that's widely used as a concept in testing. And we might have to sell testing because testing can be seen as untechnical and just focused on the business logic. It may be that the view is that engineers can do technical testing, unit testing, and that a dedicated tester can't bring anything to the table other than business logic, end-to-end testing, maybe UX testing. Testing's moved on. We're full stack. We can explore APIs, services, code, ideas, designs, and non-functional areas. We need to educate people in that and sell those ideas. The other reason we might need to sell testing is that testing is a champion. Agile teams are primarily focused on delivery. They might not have the breathing room, they might not have the time and space to think about testing. So for that end, they need someone to champion, to take that cognitive load away from them and sort of help them by saying, right, you know, you focus on delivery, but also do these things, and that will help quality as well. You need somebody to come in and do that thinking for them while they focus on delivery. And in a lot of organizations, requirements are still not perfect. What good looks like might not be understood, especially in the wild west of startups and early days greenfield development. People tend to just go, we've got a lot of engineers, build something, build anything. Well, what are we aiming for? What does good look like? We need someone to champion that view of what do we want to get out of this? What's saleable? What's good? So we need that testing. We need to sell that idea to people because people usually equate building with, you know, actual product. And as organizations and projects mature, your quality needs will change. We need to be able to sell the idea of pragmatic testing at the right time. If you're starting up in a startup and you're building a demonstrator, the quality needs on that demonstrator are going to be much lower than something that's heading for production. An enterprise organization, so by enterprise organization, for those like a big organization like a bank or a big company who's a bit more historic, are probably going to have moved maybe from waterfall to agile. They're going to need that agile view of testing. So we need to see what quality means in those organizations as well. We need to sell testing because testing's grassroots. Although quality needs to be top down, so that view of we want something good needs to come from management, the idea of testing in agile organizations is very grassroots. It comes from the bottom up. Individual contributors, or ICs, as I've said them here, will advocate for and implement testing. If you come into a startup, what will happen is usually the engineers around you want a tester. They want testing. It's not managers saying you have to do testing. Most of the organizations that I've joined have had engineers coming in saying, we want testers, we want help. So that testing, when you put it in, comes from the bottom up. Once you start showing value in your testing, once you're doing it, getting quality narratives, getting reports, managers then start paying attention, and stakeholders and the wider organization start paying attention and going, ooh, I'm interested in that information. I want to know how good something is. And they start pulling for that testing narrative. But what this means is, because it's grassroots and bottom up, is it means that testers need to have a focus on getting stuff done themselves. Gone are the days of basically waiting to be told what to test and how to test. We need to be able to sell testing. We need to go, right, I've looked at this. Here's what testing we need. Here's what tooling we need, and sell that into an organization. And finally, we might have to sell testing because we have to grow testers. I'm sure we've all seen the number of testers diminish in organizations, big organizations or small organizations, or if you're joining a startup, you might be the only tester. You cannot be a bottleneck. You cannot be that one person who does all of the testing. There's too many developers doing work for you to basically sit there and do all the deep technical testing that you need to do for all of these people's works. So that means we need to get developers helping with testing. We need to grow testers. We need to get them thinking about what testing can they do to support us or support themselves, because quality is everybody's problem. So we not only need to do testing, but we need to sell testing by giving people the tools to conduct good testing themselves. Those tools might be actual tools, or they might be knowledge and information that we use. And I'll come on to those sorts of things later. So that means we need to be a champion and a supporter. We don't want to end up just checking everyone else's work for them. Gone are the days of having like a test column in Jira or a test phase. We need to be infecting people with a quality mindset by getting involved everywhere. Because if we don't, we're not growing testers, and it means that we're not selling testing and we won't be able to go fast. We'll find that we end up with bottlenecks and that our release schedule stops because there's only one person in the organization sat there ticking everything off. So we need more people doing this. So I've talked about the why, but let's talk about what do we have to sell? So what are we selling? What are we doing here? Well, we might have to sell functional testing to people. And this basically means it's the basic form of testing. We might have to tell people, look, this is the testing that tells us that we're building the right thing, that we're basically got acceptance criteria and we're ticking them off, or it's the thing that tells us that we're making the product saleable. If you're trying to sell functional testing to people, your basic level of testing, because they, you might be the first tester in, people might be like, oh, we're building great things anyway. We need to find ways of saying, like, why do we want this? What's important to us? We can use functional testing to be like, we're on the right track. We're not going to have to rebuild things if we test properly. It speeds us up. is a good way of selling those things. We can say that it's the type of testing that allows us to sell our product because we know we've built the right thing. That might be because organizations that we're selling to or customers that we're selling to want to see like a stamp of authenticity. They want us to have different accreditations. They want us to have a level of accessibility or something. That functional testing can give us all of those as well. Functional testing also includes testing requirements using things like 3 Amigos, that's very gendered, so I say Triforce, using things like Triforce basically to push our testing left, build the right thing the first time, not having to rebuild things. And that makes our pipelines faster. That means that our team is able to focus on new things. So that's a good way of selling things as well. And for engineers, functional testing is great because it documents the project, it documents the code. That makes it inheritable. It means people can move around, you can bring in new people, you don't have to write loads of wiki pages for what your project is doing. You can just look at the tests. So that functional testing will help you in a number of ways. It can also help you debug things. Engineers love that because if you've got good tests, it will tell you exactly where problems are and it will help debugging, especially if you're into a production-based system. It helps people not have to spend all night trying to find out where problems are and correct them. So we can sell functional testing in these ways. We might have to sell people on the idea of scripted tests or automated tests. Now, those are, this is like an area that you probably have to sell least because most people are bought into the idea of automation, probably too much so. But sometimes we have to sell people on the idea of doing automated testing. And the reasoning that we might want to sell this and what we have to sell here is checking that things haven't broken, especially in a pipeline of work. We want to be able to have quick releases, short releases that are pushing forwards all the time. And we want to basically have confidence that any of the releases we're making aren't breaking things. Normally, in old school development, we have a barrage, a battery of manual tests that take a long time to run and they're very boring to run. Selling people on the idea of automation will mean that we can do this testing and it's quicker and it's faster and it means we can deploy quickly. It also means that those tests are always run and we can have auditable results. Auditable results on every pipeline are really good for us, especially if we're trying to be accredited with ISO accreditations. If we're in a regulatory industry like finance, we need to make sure that we've got those auditable results of tests so we can say, here's what testing has given you. And it also feeds back into that sales pipeline of testing. If we can say, here's what testing has given you, this many tests, always passing, telling you that you're safe, you're selling the idea of more testing. And also, we can sell the idea of automation by having testing metrics. Reports are something that managers love. They love to see code coverage. They love to see number of tests passed. They love to see the speed of testing. Gives them a warm, fuzzy feeling inside, makes them feel that they've done things. And it gives them that comfort level over quality as well. Quality narratives are great. Talking about quality is great, but also metrics and reporting will help sell your testing because managers will love to see them. The other side of this is that we might want to sell exploratory testing. So for those of you who might be new to exploratory testing, I don't mean ad hoc testing here. I mean a technical set of experiments which can be either manual or automated to uncover new information about something. So we've got our acceptance criteria or our requirements. That's great. That's told us what to build. Exploratory testing is the thing that will tell us if what we have built is good by going around and looking at the risks inherent in what we're building and uncovering information related to those risks. So we can sell exploratory testing in that way. We can say, look, you've told us what to build. We can prove that we've built that, but now we want to reduce the risk on this product by uncovering the unknown about it. How does it work in this way? How does it work on this system? How does it integrate with these things? We don't know that. We can find that out and prove that our system is better. We can use exploratory testing to start our testing much earlier. In scripted testing or automation that used for regression, you have to have built something to test it because you're building something, then checking it worked. For exploratory testing, we can start our testing earlier because it's about finding out information. I talked about the chair thing where I said, hey, you know, do we want a chair? Do we want a sofa? Do we want a bed? That's exploratory testing. That's finding out information to help decision making. We can use Triforce or Three Amigos when we're looking at requirements to start raising risks and say, cool, if that fails, what do we want to happen? And build that in. So we're building fixes for things early. Exploratory testing also allows us to test anything. There are areas that are really hard to test from an automation standpoint or from a scripted standpoint because there's too much uncertainty about them. It may be that we just don't know what something does. There's no documentation about it. There's no information about it. So we just have to fire it up, explore it, and see what happens. So we can test anything with exploratory testing. And exploratory testing yields information. I'm not ticking things off and saying 15 tests have passed. I'm saying I looked at this API, and when I threw in emojis, it broke. When I threw in Japanese characters, it broke. When I threw in a payload of 256 bytes, it broke. You're getting actual information from it. So we can start giving narratives on what does this product do and how does it do it. We can also excel exploratory testing by saying it allows us to work more closely with our team. We can explore what they're doing as they build it, give them information to help decision making, and also, rather than just reporting on passes or failures, talk about what was awesome about their product. We can say, I looked at this UI element, the design systems on it are great, it's really accessible, I loved the way that you had a call to action on every page, it was really easy to follow through. Something like that gives positive reinforcement and helps you build your relationship with the team. We also might want to sell the idea of non-functional testing. So I think I mentioned accessibility and usability before, but non-functional testing, you know, selling the idea of it will allow people to see just how good things really, really are. We might want to see, how does our product actually work on this type of cloud deployment, using this type of machine with this network latency? Can someone from Japan port into our system and find out about it? What's the performance of that? What's the security of our system? Like, how good is it? Can people basically spoof us? Can people get into things that they shouldn't do? Can they steal other people's information? Non-functional testing will give us all that and tell us how good things really are. And the earlier we try and push for that and sell that idea, less rework will happen. If we know about performance as we're building something, we don't get all the way down to end-to-end testing and a deployment to find out there's a memory leak. We can try and architect things to actually solve those problems early. And non-functional testing will make our product supportable in the wild when it's deployed in the customer's hands. We can think about observability. If we sell the idea of observability, good logging, good reporting, when something goes wrong, we know about it. We don't have to spend all night debugging something. And non-functional testing is just the right thing to do. Think about accessibility. Is it not just the right thing to do to basically say, hey, you know, 1 in 5 people around the world have some type of disability, and everyone's aging and a lot more people are wearing glasses now. Don't we want all those types of people, all those poor people, to be able to use our product? Isn't that a good thing to do? Doesn't it feel good to extend your product to working with all those types of people? And also, it's the right thing to do when it comes to things like security. Nobody wants their system to basically be, all their data to be sort of like thrown out. So let's talk about how we might want to sell things. So selling things can be difficult. And here is a WebAIMS hierarchy for motivating change. You can see on this pyramid, we have from top to bottom, the best types of motivators all the way through to the worst types of motivators. But unfortunately, those at the bottom are the easiest thing to do. Something like guilting people, saying, hey, you're not actually doing this and you're a bad person for not doing it, or you're wrong, is much easier to say, because it takes less effort, than to inspire and enlighten people. It's much harder work to educate people on what testing can do for them, and telling them about all the risks that we have and can overcome through testing. It's super hard to inspire people by showing them how their lives and work can be better through having quality champions improving their work. Like, we might want to show examples of successful testing in other teams and the wins that they've had. That's harder than basically going, yeah, you failed. So we need to make sure that when we're actually selling testing, we're focusing on like what is a good motivator for change. I'm just going to take a moment. So I've just seen a message in the chat to ask what are the most sellable reporting techniques for exploratory testing? And I'll just take a moment to answer that now. The most sellable reporting techniques for exploratory testing is basically quality narratives. Your product team and your stakeholders don't just want reports on numbers. They want to know the good, the bad, and the ugly about the product. They want demos and they want narratives telling them, this is what's awesome about this product. This is basically what you can push and sell to customers. If you tell someone, oh yeah, 15% of tests passed, they don't tell them anything about the product itself. What they want to know is, okay, this product will let you do this feature, and this feature. There's a pitfall here, but you can get around it by doing this, this, and this. It's this level of accessible. They want that type of information. So reporting techniques around saying, here's what we've tested, here are the risks that we've looked at, and here's how we've overcome them. Basically the best types of reporting there. I'm not going to go super into reporting for exploratory testing. It's saleable in that giving of information, but I can basically provide some links to some blog posts and stuff that I've written in the past about exploratory testing that will help that sort of selling of reporting there. But it's taking us away from just metrics and sort of numbers and pie charts, more towards actual information that people can drive decisions on. And that decision-making ability, rather than saying like, oh, things are failing, but I don't know what's failing, versus here's a problem, can we fix it? Yes, we can, is what's saleable. Hopefully rich. That sort of gives you a sort of a vibe on that at a very high level. So back into how we're selling testing. Here's what I've done in the past. I've joined a team, and the first thing I've done is I've given one-to-one intros with people in the team. Those intros are there to basically start building those lines of communication between myself, developers, product owners, designers, you name it. They want to know, especially if you're a new tester, what are you here to do? Why are you doing it? And also, they probably want to tell you a load of stuff about the problems that they faced with quality. And you can use that information to drive out the next thing. Setting out your stall. Based on the information that I sort of like listen to by having introductions with people, I like to set out my stall. I'll talk about that in a bit, but basically that means me telling people, I'm here, I've heard you, here's what problems you're facing, here's how I can help you, here's my flavor of testing, and starting to build that contract between me and them of what can they expect from me and how can I help them. Then I start selling my testing. So I've set up my stall, I start actually doing things. I get hands-on and I start sharing testing outputs for things. I run exploratory testing, I pair with people, I sort of give them actual tangible results from testing. Like we said to Rich, some of the sellable testing techniques for exploratory testing is narratives, giving them those narratives. I start educating people on things. What does Triforce look like? What do good acceptance criteria look like? What is testing? What's exploratory testing? I run workshops and training to help people. And I'm vocal in meetings. Selling testing means being an advocate for quality and championing it. Too often, we find testers who are very used to being told what to do and not being self-starters, being quite quiet, especially in meetings, and just going, yeah, I'll test it at the end. We have to be vocal. We have to raise risks. We have to talk about these things. If somebody's saying, oh yeah, I'm going to connect this to this, we go, cool. Is there not a risk of these things happening? We have to say, why is this happening? Like, do we all understand this? and driving forward like more information from things. So as a tester, I've always been vocal in meetings to show people I'm there, I'm doing things, I'm helping them test. And that really helps sell the idea of testing. And then I tend to end up, as I said, pairing with people. And the reason for pairing people is basically to start spreading my skills and knowledge into developers, into other testing, into other non-testing specialists in the team that will help drive out allies, and that will help them to become testers themselves, so I don't have to do everything for them. So I usually start off by doing the testing for them, then start pairing with people on the idea of they're going to start picking up testing. And I've had, as a result of this, some really awesome times where developers were pairing with developers to run exploratory testing. Then they came to me and debriefed me on their testing. And I was like, this is great stuff, people. So it can work. So I think we started talking about this, but setting out our stall. One of the first things we want to do when we're selling testing is basically to give people an understanding of what to expect and what are they getting from testing. They might have had a tester join their team. They might have not asked for it. They might be, skeptical of this. We have to come in and say, look, here's what I'm here to do. Here's exactly what I'm going to do. And here's what you can hold me to account for. I'm here to help you, to serve you, to give you information, and you can expect that from me. And that will really help build that trust. People know what to come to, and also it will help them to understand what information do they need to be giving to you? What do they come to you with? And that starts building that pull into saying like, oh yeah, I want this. So that will help selling it. We need to become a trusted advisor. So what that means is working with our team and not against our team. As a tester, you sometimes want to get your ego into play and find every problem under the sun. Every single bug that you can find. If you find 50, 100 bugs, brilliant. Oh, wow, I'm doing so good. But that's just noise. And sometimes a lot of those bugs aren't important to the team. We haven't understood what their goals are. If you're working on a technical demonstrator, your level of quality might literally just be happy path errors. That's what we test for. Testing more than that is just noise that people don't care about. We need to show that we're pragmatic with our testing and say to people, I've heard what you're trying to build. I'm going to give you information about making it the best it can be, not trying to basically chase every bug possible to prove how clever we are, or to trip up our developers, or have that test versus dev divide. We're all one team. We've all got one goal together. How does testing achieve that goal? Not through going, right, if you're stood on one leg holding a plate of lime jello while Scorpio is ascending, then it fails. If no one cares about that, it's not a good test. So we need to make sure we find out what do people care about and test for that. And some of that can be testing for positive things. Testing doesn't have to be looking for bugs. It's not just a bug hunt. We can do charisma testing. Charismatic testing is the act of looking for what's awesome about things. Most testing sessions focused on what's bad. We want to look for what's good and play that back to our team and say, this is what is great. I see what you've done there and it is awesome. Doing that will build that good rapport, good trust with your developers, because they'll say, yeah, that person has my back. They're helping me. They're telling me what's good as well as when there's a problem. So focus on being a trusted advisor rather than just trying to throw bugs at people and information they don't need. We also need to focus a lot on showing, not telling. People, especially engineers, are practical in nature, and they are going to basically want to see you doing testing so they can see the outcomes of it. They want meaningful information, meaningful results. They want to know information and issues, narratives, rather than metrics and reports. They don't want you just talking about testing all the time, saying, oh, we've got to do exploratory testing, it's really cool. They want you to show them what exploratory testing looks like. Do it, get the results, share that with people, pair with people, show them how it's done. Build reports about code coverage rather than just saying it, and put it out there. If you just keep raising risks about security, for example, willy-nilly, without understanding or showing people what's under it and getting a tool in place, then people are going to switch off. Get that tool in place, run the security scans, give people information going, right, security is an issue for us, and I found these issues. So this is basically showing people the how of testing, not just talking about the what. There's a time and a place for education, which is more theoretical, and that's at the beginning. But then we have to get into doing things, because that's what's going to sell your testing. That's what's going to support your testing, is people seeing practical use of it. I think we can all do that, like in our lives. There's a difference between being told something's awesome and seeing that something's awesome. And following all these things is that it's easier to sell the right testing to someone. We talked about being pragmatic with our testing. We have to know what testing is needed at what time in order to solve the problems that the team has had. So this can be knowing what tools would be useful for our team, what techniques will work with our teams, our projects, and our code bases. If we're looking at automation, writing our tests in the same language as our code base, that's useful. That's going to be using the right testing for the right thing. If we have a product that's deployed to the cloud, that means testing in the cloud rather than just local testing. If we've got a finance system, looking at security, looking at performance is really important, and a lot of scripted testing, because we want to make sure that we have auditability of our testing. And it also means being able to engage with the technical level of testing and enter into conversations around it. A lot of testing, especially in agile teams, need to be pushed into that technical space to engage with engineers. If you're just talking about business logic, if you're just talking about end-to-end testing all the time, you've probably lost your team, because that's too long of a feedback loop for people to be interested in. You might as well not have an embedded tester at that point. Educate yourselves on what does good unit testing look like, what does good technical testing look like, API testing, and advocate for the right testing. Recently, I tried to pull away from end-to-end testing towards an API level of testing, because our front end was under development. And if you've got a front end that's under development, it's changing all the time. And if it's changing all the time, your tests are going to flake out if it's an end-to-end test. But the underlying API and services were static. That's where our regression needed to be. So we did API downwards tests. So that was the right type of testing, and it really helped the team, and they felt heard and supported. So let's talk about who we might be selling testing to. We talked about how to sell and what we're selling. Who are we selling testing to? Well, the first sort of people are engineers. Engineers are basically going, I'm really busy. I'm trying to deliver things, as we've said. I just want to go fast. Someone's got their sound on in the background. Are they able to mute by any chance? Thank you. People just are busy. They just want to be able to test, get testing to help them deliver. They just want to get through things. They want cognitive offloading. They want other people to think about testing so they can just implement it, focus on how, and get things done. They also want to know, what's in it for me? If you've got engineers, they're very practical. If you say, hey, you should do some testing, they're like, cool, that's extra effort. Why should I? We don't need tests. I'm building the right thing anyway. So we need to give them information about what's in it for them. Not having to do things manually, not having to debug things late at night, building good code, getting practical information out of it. And also, they might not know much about testing. We talked about that. Comp sci degrees don't tell people a lot about testing. So they might not know what they don't know. We have to sell them the ideas, educate them on what they don't know. We have to sell our testing to our product members. They basically go, can we deliver this feature? How can testing help me deliver features? And they might not be technical or into technical details, but they're definitely going to be interested in narratives that allow them to make decisions. As we said to Rich, the sellable reporting techniques for exploratory testing are the details and narratives around how good is this product? Can you deliver it? Helping those product people, project managers, product owners, make decisions on, yes, this is good enough to go. I've got this amount of information. It meets my view of is this good? They might not want technical details of like this specific code failure, but they definitely are interested in what does this product do? How is it working? And where might the risk be? We have to sell to management. So like C-suite, CTOs, all sorts of managers, and they basically will go, will it add value? Why do I want to spend money on this? They're going to be very results focused. These are the people that want reports and metrics. They want that warm, fuzzy feeling of, if I've spent money on testing, I'm getting a return on my investment. So you basically want to be able to go and say, here's how quality has improved. Here's how our release schedule has improved. Here are some code coverage reports that allow us to basically get our pipeline working faster. That's the kind of thing that they want to know about. And they also want feedback from your peers and team members to basically say, I want a tester. I see the value. I want this testing to happen. So management are going to want this kind of information. Customers. These are customers, as you can see. They want to be sold testing in the view of, they want trust. They want you to be their eyes and ears on the project. They want to know that they're going to buy a good product at the end of everything. And as a result, as a tester, we want to sell them the idea of, we've got you. I'm listening to you. I'm here as your advocate. I'm going to make a good product for you. And here's how. And as a result of that, we might want some of their engagement on the project. We might want user acceptance testing. We might want design testing for them. So we have to sell them on the idea. And we can do that by making testing useful for them. We can make it easy for them. We can make it fun for them. And we can give them a finished product that is really interesting as well. We're going to have to sell testing to our line managers. The reason for this is quite often our line managers might not be testers as well. They don't know about testing. And if our line managers don't know about testing, how can they help us? How can they advocate for testing within the organization? How can they promote us if they don't know how awesome we are? We have to sell the idea of testing, and specifically our flavor of testing, to our line managers so that they can say, I see what you've done there. I see why it's great. I'm going to help you progress your career, progress your learnings, and help you spread your knowledge through to other people as well. So we have to sell testing to our line managers. It's Ramon the testing otter, and he represents other testers. Other testers might not be interested in your flavor of testing. I've worked with a lot of like old school testers who aren't interested in exploratory testing, or aren't interested in learning about automation, or aren't interested in technical testing. They're skeptical to these new ways of testing. They look at something and they go, we've always done it this way. We've always done manual scripts for things, and it's worked for us. But we need to educate them on, cool, that's great. We also need these other things to improve our pipeline to make things faster. We also want to say, hey, it can help you in your careers. It can help you in the market. You know, we can drive them to greatness, to be better. And we can help them specializing in new areas of testing. Maybe we want to sell them the idea of non-functional testing to help them become a non-functional tester. Lots of testers are usually skeptical because they're worried that they won't be able to do something. We can show them that they can do something. I started off in a bank as a manual tester who wrote manual scripts. That's all I ever did. But since then, I've learned, you know, I learned if I can do SQL, I can do a coding language. Brilliant. Learn how to code. I can do API testing now. I can do automated testing. I can do exploratory testing and non-functional testing, and I can consult on testing. It's all skills that you can learn. You are a tester already. This is just different types of testing. So we can sell them the idea as well. Cool. So where and when do we sell testing? When we're joining a team, not the A team, just a team. We want to sell testing when we join a team and where it's practical and useful to do so. We've joined a team, it's brand new, people want testing, they want to know what you're doing. We're going to sell our ideas of testing, we're going to put our contract in place to say, here's what we can give you. But also we're going to sell testing every day as part of our teamwork by saying, I'm going to pair with you, I'm going to explore that and do things. We're going to sell our testing in ceremonies by being vocal and saying, hey, here are some risks. We can find out information about those risks, or, ooh, does that requirement make sense? What happens if it errors? We can do all those sorts of things. In our retros, we can talk about, okay, how are we going to improve testing? So when we've joined a team, let's sell testing where it's practical and useful to do stuff to give people results rather than just willy-nilly. We might want to sell testing when we're making new allies or friends. We can do that by having specifically scheduled meetings with them. So that might be education pieces, that might be showing people. They might say, hey, I've heard in your team that you're doing this type of testing. Can you teach me about it? Yeah, of course we can. Let's have a session. Let's make an ally. And those allies are going to push more testing out for us. They're going to help us get more selling of testing into other teams. As topics come up, we can look for opportunities to sell testing. For example, at the moment, it's Pride Month. I use Pride Month because I'm a queer engineer to basically detail my experiences of being LGBTQIA+ in engineering, but also to talk about testing. That makes allies. That gets people going, ooh, testing is useful. I could use testing. And it helps create those pull factors into their teams and into their organizations for testing. We might have to sell testing to win people back. Now, sometimes organizations do the wrong type of testing, or testers do the wrong thing, and it makes engineers shut off from testing entirely. You end up with an angry mob of people here who basically don't care about testing. They're no longer interested in it. They had somebody that wasn't helping them. We need to win them back, and we do that slowly. Sometimes, if you've got a whole organization of people who don't like testing, we just have to focus on a couple of allies, start winning them over first, and then we can infect them with a quality mindset and bring other people on board as well. We can win people back as well by being practical. Don't speak theoretical, don't do presentations or education, show them. Do a lot of charisma testing, show them that we're in it with you. Be ruthlessly pragmatic with your testing. Show them you're doing the same thing that they are, that you have the same goals as them. Because we lose credibility in testing when we're not a trusted advisor, when we're being all talk and no action, and when we're basically trying to, raise 50,000 bugs and like prove the developer wrong. No, we want to prove them right. We want to help them, and we want to be practical. That's how we can win people back when they've lost faith in testing. You're also going to want to sell testing at interview, especially if you're the first tester in that organization. A lot of the market at the moment are startups saying, hey, we don't have a tester at the moment. How can you help us? Brilliant. Get them to say, how can you help us? They might come with ideas about testing. They might say, we want an automation specialist who's going to come in and do all this automation for us. Nah, let's sell them on what they actually need. Find out their problems at the interview, educate them on what areas of testing you can help them with. Sell them on the idea of how you can support them in their testing. And also talk to recruiters. Recruiters will help shape hiring managers' views of what the market looks like and how testing can help. If we sell the ideas of different types of testing, exploratory, manual, where automation is good, engineer-led testing, all those things, we can really help people to get that holistic view of testing, and it will help sell us into their organizations as well. And the real truth of it is that we have to sell testing all the time. Anytime you meet a new person, anytime you go into a new organization, you have to sell testing, because people forget stuff. They're doing other things. They might forget about testing. They're going to need reminders. They're going to need re-education. And there might be new context. Your team might mature. Your organization might mature. We need to recontextualize testing. What was good last sprint is no longer good now. We need to add this testing. We have to sell new testing techniques, and new types of testing for people. And anytime someone new comes into your organization, we have to bring them on the journey as well. Selling testing is not something that's just one and done. We've done it. It's something constant. And that means showing value constantly, being vocal in meetings constantly. It's hard work, but it's something we need to do in order to be able to get the value out of testing that we want. So selling testing is something that we unfortunately have to constantly do. That's everything that I have to talk about today. Obviously, you can see my blog on the bottom right there, Akehurst-Ryan.com. Please, follow it. Follow me on LinkedIn if you want to sort of engage in the conversation further. I've spoken about a number of things in the past. In my About Me page, there's lots of links to cool videos that I've done around different topics in agile testing. So if you've liked this, please do feel free to find me or reach out to me there because I've got more content as well. But thank you so much. And I will go into questions.
Thank you so much. That's a great talk. Thanks so much, Callum. Really appreciated that. A lot to ponder on there as well, I have to say. I want to open the floor up to anyone. So if you have any questions to pose to Callum, please post them in the chat or raise a hand. Well, or you can unmute yourself and ask the question as long as nobody's talking. We've got a question from Rich again. For closed-minded traditional testers who want to do checking rather than exploratory, how do you turn these people into curious exploratory testers?
No, that's a really good question. That's Rich to the power of 4. So yeah, it is a different type of testing completely. Usually what we find is that people want to be in their safety zone. When people want their testing and they want to stick to their lane, it's because they're doing comfort testing. And we need to understand why they're in their comfort zone. Oh, no. Okay. Well, yeah, why they're in their comfort zone. And I'm getting a lot of feedback from that. Can somebody mute themselves? There we go. Yeah, why are people in their comfort zone? What is it making them that's just sticking to traditional closed-mindedness? Maybe they're scared of being technical, scared of engaging. Maybe they're just being a bit, lazy and not pushing themselves into teams. We need to understand that to see whether or not people can, first of all, are they willing to? Some people just aren't willing to change. They've worked in an organization for 30 years. They're just riding it out until retirement. They don't care. So let's just leave them alone. It's fine. But for some people, we can see that they do want to learn. They do want to be educated on those things. And the best way to do it is to show them. The idea of technical exploratory testing through the stack is terrifying to people because they're like, I can't code. I'm not a software developer. I'm not an engineer. Why should I do that? Because they're scared of what they don't know. We can show them. Pair with them. I've paired with loads of testers to help them through exploration. You basically start off by opening the dev tools and going, cool, here's how data flows behind the scenes of a website. And then here's logs. Here's what logs of our services behind things look like. Here's how data flows. Show people things, it demystifies it, it makes it less scary for them. And then they go, oh, I can do that too. And you help them. And you start off by pairing where you drive and they watch, and then you reverse it. And you're there for the safety net and they're driving it. So they're doing it. And if they're doing it, they're doing it. So it's not scary for them anymore. So a lot of education pieces there. We also find that, especially when talking about testing versus checking, something I've just put a post about recently, it gets very heated. People start to entrench themselves in their career paths or what they've done because they don't want to feel lesser. They don't want to feel talked down to. We don't want to be talking down to people. We basically want to say, it's all valid. You need all of these types of testing. If you're interested, here's more. Here's what you can do if you're interested in finding out about risk, basically. And it's fun to do that. So build workshops, do these things as well. Hopefully, Rich the Power of 4, that's sort of giving you a space for it. But the TLDR is some people just don't want to learn. So don't force them. It's a waste of your effort to try and build allies for people who aren't allies.
Yeah, I have to agree. Thanks. That's a great answer. I agree, Callum. I think that I don't want to interject too much, but I will say that I think there are some companies where their entire, for example, consultancies can be like this, where their work is very much this idea that everyone does kind of scripted checking, because scripted checks are the products of what you test. So the whole point is that you hire testers to provide scripted tests, or checks. So therefore they're what they're selling is, we're going to provide all of these tests and all of these checks, and we're all going to execute them as fast as we can. Right. So in those sorts of environments, it's very hard to sell exploratory testing because exploratory testing is seen as kind of a time sink, or it's not.
Yeah.
something that the clients can see in the way. And now that's not true, as we all know. We all know ways exploratory testing of, session-based test management, for example, where you can actually tell a story about your testing. Sadly, there are some places that are very, their business model seems to be intransigent.
Yeah.
Um,
And a lot of people who see it just as ad hoc testing or chaos testing. So we have to educate on how it can be used, like specifically in a project. I've written a whole thing about why exploratory testing isn't ad hoc testing. So things like that can help as well, because then you see the value in it.
Understood. Yeah, thanks. We have another question from Ishan. Thanks, Callum. Great session. Some really great insights. What's your take on legacy enterprises? Oh, it's a bit of a scroll. What's your take of legacy enterprises transitioning to agile and having their own interpretation of concepts of agile, often fragile, spread across multiple applications and large numbers of stakeholders?
Oof, yeah, it happens all too much. People come in with their different interpretations of agile. I would say in those sorts of things, your first point of call is, do they want a consultant in testing? Do they want to use you as a test consultant and be able to actually suggest things and support things? I've come into organizations that have had bad either Scrummerful, Wagile, Fragile, all these types of things where they're doing some of it, but not all of it. I haven't tried to solve all of the agile problems. Instead, I've tried to educate where it pertains to quality about things. So this is, how do we use Three Amigos? How do we use different types of testing? How do we push that in and work with people? But again, it's one of those situations of, if the organization doesn't want that and wants you to stick just doing here, they're the ones paying you. If they want you to just do that, you can try and educate and say, hey, we could do more here if you wanted it. And if they go, no, then it's kind of a view of just going, all right, cool, I'll do this. So I am quite vocal. And again, as I'm vocal in meetings, I point out things and say, here are risks. Do we care about these risks? We're not pushing our testing earlier. That's a long feedback loop. Do we care about that? We are not coming together over a whole organization. We don't have that whole view of quality. Do we care about that? And if people go, no, we don't care, then all right, cool, they don't care. The purpose of testing is to give people information to basically drive out decision making. We gave them the information that their processes are bad. They made a decision of they don't care. So cool, we live with that. But other things that I've done around these things is I've, again, shown people practical things rather than spoken about it theoretically. I ran some exploratory testing. I basically did some non-functional testing and gave them the results of that. I basically started running, proper demos, proper retros to try and build and sell the idea of these things, to try and get that pull from management. So you can do these things, but ultimately know when to fall back, know when to go, do you know what? You've said you don't care, you don't want to do it. I know it could be better, but you don't want it better. Be pragmatic. What good looks like isn't always up here. What good looks like for an organization might be all the way down here. And that's what we have to aim for. Maybe push them a little bit, but be pragmatic with things, because otherwise you're bashing your head against a wall and it's very frustrating. I've been there.
Thank you. Thanks. Great answer. I think there is, it can also be said that it sometimes can be a logical decision for companies, like, for example, very early stage startups, to have to push something out, to want to push something out without necessarily the best quality, or to care about quality. Like, for example, if you want to be first to market, right? Often the thing is just getting a product out so you can get more funding.
Yeah.
And so, it may not have many users, but that's not the point. You want venture capital. So I think sometimes look at how the company sees quality.
This is it. And then it's about giving them the information of, here are your risks if you push that out. Here's the potential reputational damage that might happen. Have a plan in place to deal with that if it happens. That's how we can help us in that situation.
Thank you. We've got a question from Sandeep. Thanks, Callum. Very good session, I must say. From sales lifecycle, I'm imagining, where do you think the biggest challenge is or could be in selling testing? And also, what study material do you propose for testers to become good salespersons who don't like a no?
Yeah, the biggest challenge is educating people on what testing is. Lots of people have a view of what testing is, and lots of people understand testing to either be end-to-end manual testing or automate everything will solve the world. So the biggest problems in selling testing is selling different flavors of testing, selling holistic testing, showing people that you can be that technical explorer or a non-functional tester, or why does it matter? So the biggest challenges are usually around that sort of space of going, you have a view of testing, I need to re-educate your view of testing. Because if people think like a couple of unit tests will basically protect their entire pipeline, an entire product, and that's all it needs to be, that's a hard sell for anything else, because they're like, well, I don't get any value from anything else. It's just business. I don't care. So that's the hardest sell, is basically educating people a little bit at a time to give them that view of, here's what testing can be. Here's the more that we can give you. Here's how we can support that. And that's a lot by doing. In organizations, it can be a lot by blogging. So I got a lot of interest when I started blogging about how you can do Dockerized deployments for different services to do pairwise integration of service tests, rather than basically spinning everything up and then doing your integrations, because it was faster. A technical solution to something that was practical got people interested in what other testing they could have from it. So biggest challenges are they don't know what they don't know, or they might have a view of testing. The solution to that is to show them something, put it out there into the world, and they'll go, "Ooh, maybe I don't know what I don't know," and they'll ask for more information about it. So that's kind of the big ones there. For study materials, obviously, I'm going to point people to the Ministry of Testing. Educate yourself from that has a wealth of information there as well. There are some people on LinkedIn who are good as well. Marit is a really good exploratory tester that I follow. She does a lot of education pieces there as well. Coming to these sorts of conferences, coming to Test Bash, any of the global Test Bashes or Agile, testing days, any of those sorts of things are really useful as well. And driving forward that kind of knowledge of testing yourself will help you. Also, if you want study material to become a good salesperson, start blogging, start giving talks. It's really good practice. I got better at selling testing by basically talking to friendly audiences such as you, who've come to a talk to hear me talk about this. You want to learn about this. This is a good way of selling, right? Start doing this. It gives you good practice for selling to harder people because you get the confidence in it. That's the best thing I could do. So look at like TED Talk training, look at like that confidence thing, and educate yourself on different types of testing. Are my suggestions there.
I just want to say on the first of all, I've got a question from Rich, who said, "Why green? The slides and the blog?" And then
branding, branding. I liked that color. It stood out. I could give you like a big accessibility spiel about like dyslexic people being able to read better on those sorts of pastel colors against black. But frankly, I thought acid green was cool, and I was like, yeah. There you go. That's my color. I went for it. I mean, that and otters are my branding. So I was like, yeah, that's what I'm doing.
It's so cool. No, I think green's perfectly fine. Actually, one of my favorite colors. But I will say, I just want to say something about what you previously said. I think that there's a view in the industry. I think, and I think the fact that we have so many conferences, and so many prominent testers kind of gives this idea that there's this sort of everyone in this level, and there's this sort of elite tester, which is kind of untouchable. They get invited to conferences, they do the public talks, they're the ones who write books and have blog articles. Now, and I think that may have been the case something like 5 or 10 years ago, but I think that there could have been this conception. But I think now, frankly, anyone is an expert in this field if you're a tester with any sort of real experience. And we have people who speak at our talks at Sydney Testers, who have rarely ever done public speaking, and they probably have a certain niche, particular field interest in a certain area. But apart from that, they're no different to the rest of us. So
it's very true. Like
Sorry.
organizations or the conferences love first-time speakers. People want first-time speakers because they don't want the same people over and over again. If you look at Test Bash, if you look at Agile Testing Days, a lot of them are first-time speakers now because they want new people. They're also putting into place a lot of like abstract reviews and talk reviews to basically strip away the names of people so that you're not just, it's what's interesting to talk about. And I promise you, if you do a talk or if you write a blog post, people will be interested. Talk about what you know about, talk about your experiences in your language, in your way of speaking, because it will resonate with someone. You might be the one who has the same shared experience as someone else and they go, I get this person. They make sense to me. I started blogging, LinkedIning, doing these sorts of talks about 4 or 5 years ago, just before COVID. It hasn't been that long. And I just started doing it because I started a new organization and I just started blogging about starting in a new company, what I did. And it's just gone from there. I have a style, again, green otters, my own language that I talk, and it works for people. You can find that too. So yeah, it's not about elite. Fun fact, anyone can write a book. They're only PDFs these days. It's not, it's like, you're not massively, it's not massively scary to write a book. You can do it. So don't think that it's like for some high elite of people. It's for everyone. If you want to share your experiences, if you want to get better at that public speaking and selling, do it, because, you know, no one's stopping you. And yeah, you might get a few like knockbacks from people like not taking your specific talk to a conference because loads of people want to do it, but there'll be things like this, smaller ones, and blog posts where people will read, they'll comment, and they'll be interested. We're having, you know, I've given you a talk and I've got, you know, feedback from you all and questions and stuff. It's good. People will do that for you. So definitely, yeah, like Paul said, it's not for the elite, it's for everyone. Like, get your voice out there. And it's just good practice.
Thanks. And I should also say that we are also the Sydney testers, and we're not the only group, you know, that has this problem. We're crying out for speakers, you know, and we do encourage a lot of first-time speakers or people who have not spoken at conferences. Basically, if you've got an interesting story that you think people want to hear, we'd like to hear you talk, you know, if in person in Sydney and for online events, wherever you're from in the world, we don't care.
I, for one, would be really interested in talks about like legacy enterprises transforming to agile, like all the questions that people have had and want solutions to. You don't have to come up with solutions in your talk. You can do an experience report and talk about where you are now. For example, you don't have to give people solutions. Like talks about like, what does fragile agile look like for testers? What does that transformation look like for testers? And at the end, you can enter into a Q&A where people give you suggestions. You can talk about what you've tried to do and whether that was successful or failed. That's relatable. That's an awesome topic. So I'd be interested in that personally, because it's been a while since I've worked in those organizations and I'd like to have a refresher on where things are. It's also a nice palate cleanser because people like me do a lot of talks about modern agile practices, working in cool startups and all that kind of stuff. What about real people? What are they working on? More people work in big enterprise organizations than startups. Let's hear from them. So yeah, I'd be interested in that. Hint, hint.
Cool. Thank you so much. Let's see if there's any other questions from the floor. Ishan just posted again, mate, you will be surprised how some stakeholders think testing is just compliance.
Oh yeah, I worked in a bank. I know. Yeah.
Well, often you'll find that their view is very traditional too. Like, for example, they want a massive report, or they want all your test cases approved by upper management, that they correspond to specific points before you test. So you've got this massive, huge feedback loop before you can even start.
The fun thing there is trying to show people how you can use exploratory testing and automated testing in ISO. I recently was part of an ISO compliance audit, and there's nothing that says you can't use exploratory testing notes. It makes the auditor have to read your notes more because it's a bit less tick, tick, tick. And you have to come up with a way of creating a dashboard to make it easier for them and yourself to find the information if you can't remember where it is. But other than that, like, you can use exploratory testing for an ISO compliance. They love it. They were like, ooh, this is so modern. We've never seen this from an organization. They all do scripted tests. Ooh. And you go, yeah, we're cool. So yeah, there's nothing stopping you from doing that. So yeah, compliance can come from any type of testing. ISO only says, if you say you're going to do some testing, do it. That's basically it for the most part.
That's cool. Thank you so much. Any other questions from the floor? You can unmute yourself if you like and ask. James has asked, first, a nice message from Sandeep. I have to drop now. Thanks, Callum, for the awesome session and good advice. Paul and everyone who joined today, appreciate everyone's time. Well, thank you, Sandeep, and thanks to everyone who's attended. Question from James Litton has asked, can you suggest the best references for testing?
Yes, and this will have to be my last one because I've got to run to my stand-up because it's the morning here. So, yeah, the best references for testing. I would say if you follow anyone on LinkedIn and they've got a blog, like, find someone that speaks to you, but generally look at the Ministry of Testing. The Ministry of Testing has a wide variety of crowdsourced blogs, crowdsourced posts and articles, talks, videos, ask me anythings. They've got a forum that you can ask questions in. And they've got a Slack channel. They're really good. So I would say the best references for testing, get onto the Ministry of Testing. It's written by testers, it's run by testers, and basically that can support you in like any area that you're interested in. And there'll be so many people talking about any different specific thing that you'll find someone that basically resonates with you, that you can understand best, because different writing styles will probably support you.
All right, thank you so much. Well, Rich just said, thank you, Callum. All right, we'll let you go, Callum, because you've got your meeting coming up. But thank you.
Yes.
And I look forward to meeting you in a few months in the UK.
Yeah, see you at Test Bash. Right. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.